Hello again. This is another cut from the famous AutoHub show, now in season 5, and this is our famous one-on-one interview show. This is not a live show, even though it says that behind me, but it is an interview show, and we have a 40 under 40 winning car person, Matt Raymond here. So, Matt, I mean, 40 over 40, congrats, but tell me more about the story. How did you get into the car industry? Uh, where did you start? Is it something that you planned? Those kind of things. So go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're at too, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Matt Raymond, and located in Charlotte, North Carolina area. And no, I didn't plan on going into the car industry like anybody else. I think there's a very small group of people that actually plan on the car industry itself. But for me, I got into the automotive industry back in 2010, 2009, right in that area. And so for me, it was exciting. I started a Toyota store, started selling cars, and I got bored right within like a couple hours. And I walked into the BDC and I said, "Hey, is there anything for me to do?" I came out of a law enforcement career and from UPS and stuff like that. So I'd always just done jobs where I'm always hustling. And the BDC manager handed me a bunch of scripts and said, "Call this customer and say, if I can take you out of your current car, put you in a new car with a similar or lower monthly payment, would you at least consider it?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." And I started selling cars that way. And he left, and the dealership put me in as BDC manager. I had no clue what BDC manager consisted of, what it should pay, or anything like that. So I just started making phone calls to customers, but also to all our vendor partners. And over the 8 years, I grew to run their digital operations as well as oversee the call center. Moved to North Carolina to work for a dealer group that had one store, and we grew to 7 stores.
Wow.
And then while I was there, we kind of really built a solid process for service BDC. And I just said to the dealer principal, Kristen Dillard, I said, "Kristen, I think this would be a huge opportunity for taking this process and bringing it into automotive and be an outsourced service BDC solution for dealers all over the country." And that was back in 20, gosh, the years fly by. That was back in 2023 that we went to market on it. And so we're about 18 months into it now. And when we started, we had 0 clients. We had built it inside of an auto group, but they were not our first clients, which in the beginning I was like, "Man, this is crazy." But as it grew, it forced me to put my selling shoes back on and go door knocking and get dealers signed up. And then it's just grown and grown and grown. And the one thing about us is we picked the name Bowtie Solutions, so we didn't use something that was car this or dealer that, because we just saw an opportunity to be a white glove service for dealerships, to be an extension of their team, and to also help them save in expenses but increase their revenue.
That's all great stuff. I mean, it's kind of interesting. So I have been in the car business 25-ish years now. I actually work for a company out of Charlotte called the BDC Experts or Proactive Dealer Solutions, and I set up and fix BDCs. But before I did that, I worked 10 years retail, and I managed one of my last jobs in retail was an internet manager. But I've been on the phone since I sold life insurance over 30 years ago. But at the end of the day, what I saw working with manufacturers and dealers all over the U.S. was that if in Canada was that A, you got to have a story, B, you got to have a script, C, you got to execute. So it's kind of funny that you bring that up because I recently got a recall done on my car, and the dealer was trying to execute the process properly, but then it fell down. So they knew I was coming in for service. They knew I was going to do a recall. They knew when. So one of the sales ladies at the dealership was smart enough to call me and say, "Hey, would you consider a new car? We're looking for cars like yours. We'll pay more and this and that." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm always open to a conversation." And then the expectation went like this when it showed up. But the thing that was funny about it was this is not a new process. I mean, I train groups as large as Hendrick, work with manufacturers as big as Mercedes-Benz. But really, at the end of the day, it was really about doing that sustained activity at scale and making it impactful for the consumer. But more importantly, whether it's sales or service, it was about really having a game plan and executing. And the reason when I look at it now and bringing it forward almost 15 years from when I was doing that is the biggest challenge that we talk about every week on the show is about customizing that customer experience around a customer. So I've interviewed technology companies, I've interviewed dealers, I've interviewed BDC companies, I've interviewed manufacturers even, who all basically say, hey, we want a great customer experience that's customized to that customer. We don't know how to do it, but that's our goal.
Right.
Whether it's in service, whether it's in sales, whether it's in finance, whether it's in parts, is of course the holy grail, but those kind of things. And the thing that I think is really interesting as we move into the AI side of things, which I think is going to eventually become five companies versus 2,000, but eventually it'll get there, is that it is now possible with a great process and technology to not only do a scripted process, but also do a very customized individual process that's built around a consumer now. Whereas before it was basic activity at scale. So, what's your opinion of that as we look at things like, I don't know, these kind of phones or, the old school kind of phones? I have one over here that I don't use anymore, but an old school kind of phone attached to the wall. Like, what's your opinion of how that's going to change with AI and technology versus, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. So we always tell dealers, when we're talking to them, because that's the big thing. Do you have AI? We tell them, yep, we have AI. We have actual individuals that will sit there and help you on the phones. Recently, I had a phone call with a company not associated with Automotive,
Yep.
and the young lady that we were talking to had invited us to attend one of their events. And she said that 5 years ago, their consumers were showing up looking for the latest and greatest AI technology. And now their consumers are showing up and they're like, who's running call centers with real people? Because the consumer experience still needs a human involved. And listen, there's a lot of great AI companies out there. AI, what I see it happening is it's going to assist people. So here's how I kind of see it playing out, right? You call me, I'm service BDC, let's say, and you start talking to me and you start asking me questions, and I can answer those questions. But all of a sudden you say, hey, does my 2025 Toyota Camry take conventional oil or synthetic oil, right? The average BDC rep might not know that off the top of their head, especially if they're new. And all of a sudden, AI pops the answer up on the question, says, tell them synthetic oil. Great. Do you know what kind of oil it is? Yeah, tell them 0W20, that type of stuff. And I might have even gotten that wrong. That might have changed since I was selling, right? But at the end of the day, that's where I see AI coming in handy. I also think it's going to come in handy with having conversations on the phone. Somewhere out there, I believe that there's technology or somebody can develop technology where you and I are talking in English, but it can transpose it to French, to Spanish, to whatever it needs just as fast as we're talking. And that's going to eliminate the need for people to have to be or staff accordingly for bilingual, right? Because we live in a world now where people move all over the place, right? They move to different countries. We had somebody that worked for us for a while that spoke Slovakian. How many Slovakian calls we got in Charlotte, North Carolina? None. But I had somebody on staff that could speak it, right? So the ability to have technology to be able to adapt to the languages, Spanish is a big one, and those languages. We're at our worship team for our church. We have a couple of gentlemen from. One is from, I'm trying to think right now, Argentina, and the other one is from Peru.
Yeah.
And they were asked how to say something in Spanish, and they both had two different words for it. And so it would be kind of like the equivalent of soda, pop, and Pepsi, right? Or Coke. And so that's where I think AI is going to help there too. I don't think you're going to entirely remove the human aspect of it. And I think there's one of the things that's cool about it for us is that the way we set up our system and our processes is that if a dealer has AI, let's say you call in and you get their AI scheduling service and they go, hey, I want to talk to a live representative. Instead of rolling that call to a receptionist that is not prepared, right? And it's not anything against them. It's kind of like the things we should prepare for the most, we need to practice for them the most, right? So the receptionist is over here doing 100 other things, not prepared to get a phone call, but that one time that customer deviates and needs to become a phone call, they kind of fumble through it. Well, what we can do is we can back up their AI. So if they say live representative, we can kick that call right over to our call center and we can answer it. And the thing is that we put behind it is now we've got a phone number and we'll label that phone number. So now we can tell the dealer, hey, last month you received 500 phone calls, 250 of your customers requested to talk to a live agent. That would be a huge number for a dealer to know. And that's the other part of what we love to do is we love to provide dealers with actionable data.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up. So, one of the sponsors of the show is a company called VidCalls. So, it's a very simple video technology to do a two-way video call without software. For 2025, we're launching a pilot with a bunch of dealers where we're going to be adding real-time language translation in 104 languages, not only to the video call, but to their website. So they can customize that experience to the customer, no matter what language that customer speaks, and their agents don't have to speak that language. So, for example, if I'm a dealership, say in Los Angeles, yeah, I may get some Spanish, but I may also get Korean and Vietnamese.
Correct.
If I'm a dealer in Charlotte, yeah, I may have English, but I may also have 20 other dialects that I'm not aware of. And it was interesting as we've done this arrangement with this company that has this technology and they have a patent because they are telling us based on their initial pilot, which is 200 locations in the US market, and we're bringing that into Canada as well soon, is that the average language spoken in big urban markets in North America is between 35 and 50. And most dealers not only don't know that's the case, they don't have staff that can handle it, even if those calls came in. So I think that's kind of the future of customer experience, not only customizing that experience from the website to the phone call to the video call to the visit, also having that data as a dealer to say, okay, maybe the dealer down the street just thinks English is the language, and I know these top 10 are the ones I got to focus on. But also, it empowers that dealership or the call center in your case, or even an outsourced call center to say, hey, I don't need to staff up for Peruvian Spanish. I just
Right.
have this technology that allows me to do that. So the other thing that's interesting as we move towards that new reality with technology is that it isn't even just auto anymore. It's like, okay, if I'm buying a Louis Vuitton bag, or if I'm going to the dentist, or if I'm looking for legal help, and it's interesting you brought up different languages. We've been talking to some legal firms in the U.S. market. Yeah, I'm going to get a call on a Saturday from a guy who got arrested for drunk driving who's not from around here.
Right.
Like, I don't know, Eastern Europe, I think was the language the guy was talking about. So how do you deal with that? And the same is true at the dealership. If I've got a receptionist who maybe is taking inbound calls, press 3, press 55, whatever. She may only speak one language, but that doesn't mean the customers are. Or roadside assistance comes to mind. So when you look at these, what would I say? AI call center automation, whether it be Brook.ai or Numa or what's the other one? Stella, like the beer. Where do you think they fit into that piece? Like, what do you think?
I mean, they've got the technology. I think the key to AI is really just analyzing hundreds of thousands of millions to billions of conversations, right? I mean, this is why the Amazon of the world will go much faster than, you know, somebody that's kind of building AI on their own because they just can dump that many more conversations, right? If you ever get a chance, if you go on Verizon's website and go through their whole AI bot, it functions far better than a lot of AI bots I've ever been through. Like one day I went through the whole process. I didn't even know I was talking to AI until it told me at the very end. And I was like, wow, that's pretty solid.
Oh, it's like
Um,
the Apple customer experience when you call them and they have your phone number, they know who you are.
right.
Like,
Well,
oh,
and that's
hey Ian, how you doing?
well, that's just it. And so funny you say that. So when dealers sign up for us and they call into our software, if they've been in before and they've called in before and they're using the same number, it'll pop up and tell me that Ian's calling. The other day I was in there. What I like to do is jump in and handle calls every day, or once a week, just to go through, see what the agents are doing, jump
Yeah.
like new stores. And I grabbed a phone call and I was talking to the customer, and it was one of those, hey Ian, we're talking. He's talking about the weather, and I'm scheduling the appointment. And then I said, all right, well, we've got you all set up for Thursday at 2 p.m. to get your Sierra in. And he's like, how did you know all that? And I'm like, oh, it just all popped into the system. And while we were just having a general conversation. He was talking about kind of life and everything else. And I went through the whole process. And, at the end of it all, it was a 2 minute and 10-second conversation. But um, that's the thing that, the technology needs to help with, right? Can we imagine if I was like, okay, and what's your name and what's your number and what's your email and it just speeds up the conversation, the technology. One thing I'll say is, our average age of agents is roughly between 18 and 25 years old. So they're of a younger demographic.
Yep.
And I've never asked them to do this. I don't have this on my computer because this isn't how I work, but they have closed captioning on their
Yep.
computers. So
Yep.
as the customer's talking, they're looking at it and reading it. The advantage to this is that when myself or the BDC director, when we're in the room and we're walking around, if they're on the phone with a call, we can just look right over their shoulder and see what's being said. Can you listen in on a whisper and stuff like that? Yeah, you can. But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I want to read what the customer's saying
Right.
versus kind of hearing the two conversations go back and forth. And I love that. And they all wanted to install that. We never asked them to install that, but it's just this is also the same generation that always has the TV on while they're scrolling their phone. I mean, my daughter would read, she'd be reading two different books at the same time while watching a movie. And I'm like, how is this all coming together? She's like, I don't know. It's just what I do. I'm like, that's amazing, and I'm over here like, just making sure I can walk and chew gum some days. No, but yeah, I think the AI revolution and stuff like that it's going to change from. I think everybody thought it was going to replace people, and now what I think they're realizing it's going to help the people. The I firmly believe that it's going to be a tool for people to get to the next step. Um, you know, there's dealers that we have on board that have a client like Numa, where when we're talking, we're scheduling the appointment, but if they need something more, if it has to go to a service advisor, if the service advisor doesn't answer, Numa can grab that and handle it. There's there's the ability for companies like Stella, Brook, whoever else out there, if they want a live agent, they could roll it over to us, right? The biggest thing for dealers right now is they have to figure out, do I want to have the expense of having humans in my store, or do I want to outsource that? And somebody recently asked me on a demo that I was doing, they said, if you were in my shoes and you've been in the dealership world, what would you do? And I said, it's going to sound like a selfish pitch, but going back on it and looking back when I was digital operations director for Team Automotive Group, is I would have outsourced my service BDC because you're scheduling service
Yep.
appointments.
Yep.
Because you're outsourcing your marketing. I would have outsourced the service BDC, outsourced marketing. On sales BDC, though, what I would have done is had teams built with inside the stores, because we had centralized BDC at the time. I would
Yeah.
have had individuals inside the stores, and they would have gotten on the phone. They would have worked hand in hand with the sales managers, just putting deals together. And then I would have outsourced something, maybe if we want to do campaigns or things like
Yeah.
that. And because the reality is that, like, everybody talks about digital retail, and not to go down a whole other tangent, but everybody talks about digital retailing, and none of these tools really let the customer buy the car. They still have to get on the phone with a person. So my
Yep.
whole thing is let's just get, like, what are you looking to do, right? Let's just get people on the phone. What are you trying to do? I want to buy a car. Okay, do you have a trade? You know, just do it all on the phone. Don't be scared. I know people say, well, we're going to lose gross, or we're going to do this. I just bought a car not too long ago, and I did everything over the phone. I just called up, said, this is what I want. They said, we'll sell it to you for this. Fair deal. Let's rock and roll. Got the finance manager on the phone, talked to me about packages. I took the ones I wanted, refused the ones I didn't. And they delivered the car to me on Saturday. I even got to pause the football game so I could go downstairs, sign the paperwork, and then go back upstairs and resume the football game. Like, nothing in my life got disrupted in this entire purchasing process. And it was the easiest process in the world. That's what it needs to be. It
Yep.
just needs to be, it needs to be frictionless, because as much as we talk about the car being the second biggest purchase of people's lives, it's such a instrumental piece of people's lives. I mean, I was just hearing the other day, somebody was talking about it, and I forget, it might have been on the news. So I don't know if I get in trouble for quoting somebody on the news, but they were
No.
talking they
All
were
good.
talking about the subway system because of all the issues going on in New York, and they said, people that can't afford an Uber are the ones that are taking the subway systems. But
Yep.
otherwise people are driving and using, Uber, and Uber, obviously they need cars too. The reality of it all is that it's a commodity.
Yeah.
A vehicle's become a commodity, because especially here in America, I mean, you've got to drive everywhere. Um, so when you have that type of situation, you've got to stop it, looking at it as a luxury, and like, people will bend and flex. Like, most of the time, especially the way prices have been for cars, people, it's more of a headache. They're like, oh man, I have to buy a car. I've never heard anybody say, oh, I get to go buy a new car this week. It's always, oh, I have to go buy a car this week. So Someday maybe it'll go back to I get to, but right now it's a I have to. So I think that AI and all this, the human element's got to be there. And the other thing I always use as an example is, AI when it comes to scheduling an appointment, it might not be picking up the empathy, right? So you answer the phone and you find out Mrs. Jones is calling you, and her car won't start, and she was supposed to leave to go to her son's graduation from the Naval Academy, and she's got to be there by tomorrow. That's a situation where you get the service manager on the phone. The service manager's talking to her. He's like, you know what? No problem. I'm going to send somebody out with a jump pack. They jump the car. They get it to the shop. They test the battery. Find out all she needs is a new battery and send her on her way.
Oh, 100%. I
You
mean, we,
know it.
we did shows, God, now it's been 3 years. Maybe it's 3 years ago. Anyway, when we were in the midst of the pandemic and everyone was like, "Oh, we got to have digital retail," and "Oh, it's finally going to happen," and all this stuff. So we did interviews of people before they got acquired. So a bunch of different companies in that space. And then they both got acquired, the ones that we interviewed. I think we interviewed three. I think two of them got acquired by big names you'd know. One of them, I think, is Roadster. The other one was Moto Insight off the top of my head. But the thing to your point, and I think Paragon has done this really well with frictionless, but and A to Z Sync is a regular on the show too. They also do something like this. At the end of the day, and I'll use myself as an example because I was recently looking at replacing my car. The setup was okay, but the experience once you got there was not good. But more importantly, if they had been prepared and said, "Hey, we took a look at your vehicle. Here's the value. Obviously, we got to do a walk around. Here's the new vehicle. This is what it would cost. Does this make sense?" Versus spending 3 hours and not doing anything. That's a problem. So the reason I bring this up is back in 2007, I think was the first time I met Brian Bensuck. I met him at Vegas at a conference. I think it was driving sales digitally or something like that. And he was talking about lease penetration. And at the time, he had a lease penetration number of, I think, 75%. And the reason was strictly just timed offers that made sense to the customer, when made it easy for them to buy something. And I agree with you 100%. If that person who is a car person, I am one, I still don't like the car buying process. I just like cars. So do I want to spend 4 hours at a dealership to make a new car purchase? No, I don't. I mean, I like car dealers, but I really don't want to do that. So if the biggest complaint that we hear on the show, and that I think people that I know want to buy cars have the same complaint, is why does this take so frickin' long? And I think part of it is digital retail might work for some people, but they're going to have questions. Digital retail for Tesla might work for some people, but they're going to have questions. Carvana, it might work for some people, but they're going to have questions. Amazon's get into it, but they're going to have questions. I think really what you need to do, and that's why frictionless is so important, you need to customize that road to the sale from 100 years ago to that customer today. And then most of those customers are millennials and youngers today. They're probably 50% of the population. And shockingly, they don't have patience at all. Like, I mean, you were bringing up the multiple screen scenario. I mean, my wife watches stuff on a laptop and watches TV too, but I can't do that because I don't feel I can do two things that well. But I look at my nieces and nephews, they're very, they're convinced they can do six things well, which is fine. I don't think they can, but it's fine. It's how they live. But you've got to customize that experience to the customer. So when I look at texting, to pick a random technology, if I'm talking to someone who's under 40 or under 30, it's more likely to use a text message for them. That may not be the perfect solution, but that's what they're familiar with. If it's someone who's 25, TikTok may be the way to go. I mean, I saw a thing today on video online in terms of on social, but at the end of the day, the process is still similar, but you have to ask questions and listen a lot better. And I think that's something that's different with technology. Yeah, the AI might be able to listen, but more importantly, what do you want to do, Mr. or Mrs. Customer?
Well,
What's going to make it easy for you? That's
well,
basically.
that's exactly it. And like, we were talking, I was visiting one of our clients yesterday, and we were talking about, taking the notes. So when a customer calls in, my car's making a rattling sound. That can go great. Your car's making a rattling sound. Let's get it diagnosed. Let's get you in for an
Yeah,
appointment. Or we can have our agents do things like this.
yeah,
When you say it's making a rattling sound, tell me more. well, when I put this CD in and drive 60 miles an hour and hit speed bumps going through my neighborhood, it makes a rattling sound. Well, okay, now this is making sense, because when we go out and road test it, we might have to throw that CD in and go 60 miles an hour through your neighborhood and make it rattle, and so that's the stuff that I believe you're going to still need a real human involved in, and you're going to need it for the empathy side of things. we've
Yep.
just got to we've just got to figure out how to take humans and make them work um, with technology. I had to laugh when you were talking earlier about buying a car and do I want to spend 4 hours in a dealership. A friend of mine, he is a general manager at a Toyota store, and he had a massive heart attack, and his wife called 911, and I think they had him in the ambulance to the hospital and in surgery faster than a car dealer could get somebody into finance. And and it's just, and they still have to do the process, right? And this is what we talk about all the time, is that, like, the old, I'll call them old school car guys and car gals that are out there, the people that were doing it 50, 60 years ago,
Yep.
they're the ones we got to be listening to now, because everybody says they're old school. No, they've got the process dialed in, because they never skipped a step in the process. And now you get I just need the sale. I need the sale. I need the sale. They were in the relationship business, right? They all had business cards in their pocket. They're handing them out. They're handing them out at baseball games. They're handing them out wherever they go. They're your local car guy, and everybody wants a car guy or car gal. They're your local lawyer. They're your local barber. Everybody wants, I call it the I got a guy, I got a gal syndrome. Everybody wants that, right? So that's where we need to go to, so that when people reach out, boom, there starts the frictionless experience that you're talking about. And then from there, and somebody just had this on LinkedIn the other day about them doing it at their dealership. Let them do it from start to finish. And if you need somebody to sign up in finance, it's a notary or whatever, then hire somebody in there. I know there's a lot of people who agree and disagree with that, and product in the back. But
Right.
when I was selling Toyotas, one of my big things was always talking about the product before they went to finance.
Yep.
And I always heard, well, that's why I'm buying a Toyota. And I'd see that building right there? Yep. That's our service center, from everybody that was just buying a Toyota. They do break, they do have issues, and I recommend this warranty.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
and
100%.
and then the next thing to follow it up with was, I buy it for all my cars. And if you look at any of the stats that are out now, the younger generation is going back to the experience of somebody else over what they find online. I
Yep.
mean, you and I could Google the same thing right now. You could read one Reddit article. I could read a different Reddit article, and we're going to get two different opinions on two different things. Or you call up, your friend, your brother, somebody you really trust, and say, "Hey, I'm looking at buying a car and I want to get Gap. What do you think?" And if they tell you don't get Gap, you probably won't get Gap. But if they tell you you should get Gap, you're probably going to get Gap.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for Nissan Motor Company, and I worked with 68 dealers, and I trained not only in the service department but also in the finance department for different products, and also their certified program. And the thing that shocked me the most doing that, and I work with a lot of locations, was the fact that the business managers, not to beat them up, they thought they knew better than the customers what the customer should buy. And I said to them, I said, hey, like, it's about options. It isn't about what fits for everybody. It's about asking questions and listening. But more importantly, to your point, and I've owned many cars in my life, there are certain things that I buy that make sense for me. So what I would always ask when I sold cars, I said, listen, how are you going to use the car? Well, I'm going to keep it for this long and this and that. Okay, these are the products you should look at. And then I would, meet with the finance director before they went in there. I'd say, okay, here's the things that I set up for you to talk about. But that doesn't mean you can't talk about other things. But these are the things that are likely that they're going to be interested in. And the other thing that I would do, and it was always kind of funny to me, was if someone was asking questions around that stuff, or even accessories, which is another thing I like to sell a lot, that a lot of salespeople didn't, is I said, hey, you bought this car, congratulations, did you want to personalize it? And a lot of people miss that. The other thing that I always think is kind of funny with car dealers. So let's just say I have a 100,000 square foot facility, and I spent all the money to make it like a Taj Mahal. There's the ability to make money with branded merchandise that most people aren't missing out on, because that person is coming because it's a Jeep or because it's a Mercedes or because it's a
Right.
Porsche or whatever the brand is that they like. they're sold in the brand, and the ones that always do it the best is Harley Davidson, in my opinion. But I think BMW does an okay job, as does Porsche. But I mean, Harley Davidson's half their revenue. Like if you think that stuff ain't making them money, you're not the brightest tool in the shed. I mean, they're making money. But why couldn't that be true with a Chrysler dealer or a Ford dealer or a Honda dealer? I mean, it's not like Hondas have a massive margin on their cars, but at the end of the day, that person who's a Honda fan or a Toyota fan, they're going to want to accessorize with Toyota stuff because they're a Toyota person, right? Like that's why they're there, unless they piss them off for whatever reason. So, what's your opinion on the campaign side? When you're working with a dealer and they're saying, "Hey, I got to make more money because I didn't figure it out 2 years ago, and suddenly I'm having to negotiate on price of cars again." What's your opinion on how campaigns have changed over the last 3 years for a car dealer?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and we handle, our clients are service BDC focused. We really got niche and stayed in our lane on that. But let me touch real quick on what you're talking about with the merchandise. I agree, because if you go, like, North Carolina is known for their craft beer, right? You go into, I mean, we got 36,000 craft breweries, for crying out
Yeah,
loud, in North Carolina, but you walk into them and right next to any register is a whole wall of swag.
yeah,
So that goes to your point there. But the other side of it, when you talk about campaigns, the campaign side of it is cars sold themselves back during COVID, right? Because inventory was low. The customer had to call, make sure it's available, drive there. Well, now there's an abundance of inventory in general. And so the customer doesn't have to give you all their information. Like,
yeah,
this is what I was talking to a dealer about the other day. Let's just use easy math. The internet's been around for X number of years, but people have been going online doing form submit since I was there in the retail side, 14 years, 15 years, right? But even before that, so let's say 20 years. In 20 years, the average person's probably bought, let's say, minimum 2 cars,
yeah,
maybe, but most 3, 4, 5. Um, and when they put their information in online, the BDC sat there and, call them till they buy or die. Well, now if I can go on your website, see real live photos, and drive past your dealership, do I need to actually give you all my information to beat me up on the phone?
no,
Right. And if you put a poll out after this launches and said, on your form fills, do you require name, phone number, and email, name and email, but not a phone number? Every dealer is going to give you a different answer. And so I like to go into other verticals and look at what other verticals are
yeah,
doing. What makes it the easiest, right? I mean, man, I've gotten down. I think I've bought stuff before just because I ended up down this whole rabbit trail and just converted. And I'm
yeah,
like, oh, dang, the car's a little bit different. I get it. But at the same time, how do we get them down that funnel? And somebody was just talking about this the other day where, big thing, it was Ben Hadley. If you haven't talked to Ben, he's a great guy.
yeah,
But the funnel, right? We always talk about the funnel. Well, most of the people that we're talking to in the car world are already in the funnel.
yeah,
So we act like that we're pulling them down the funnel. They're in the funnel. It's just at what stage. And so for us, like in the auto industry, how do we kick them into the funnel? The average consumer, 2% are in the market. Um, but I look at service, right? So how do we keep them coming back for service? And some of the stuff we do is proactive outreach for our dealers, where we're reaching out and pulling them in, inviting them in, telling them they should come in. But it goes to the next level. And I'll go back to what we were talking about, where can I recommend services? Customer calls in and let's say I answer the phone. Hey, I need an oil change. Excellent. Also, am I adding a tire rotation to that? No. Okay, I was just asking because most of my customers will have the tires rotated when the car's already in the air to improve the life of the tires,
right,
when they're getting the oil change done. Well, now that you say that, yeah, let's add a tire rotation. Okay, excellent. Or, hey, I'm calling in to schedule maintenance. Excellent. You call in to schedule the manufacturer's recommended maintenance, right? If a dealership does a really good job of plugging that into their service schedule, or we just type in the mileage, yeah, what's recommended? Well, tire rotations, air filters, you just rattle through the list. That sounds really good. I'll take that. I don't know how many times dealers or customers have signed up for the package and taken the package because it was recommended based upon the manufacturer's recommendations. So they're calling in because we're experts and we need to treat it as such. We need to be, I don't think you need to go so hard to upsell that you're driving the customer away. But hey, while the car's in the air, we recommend the tire rotation.
Right.
It's just like the multi-point inspection that doesn't get enough value. Every dealer advertises, we see it all the time. Hey, we'll do a complimentary multi-point inspection. That's good, but what sounds better than a complimentary multi-point inspection? Hey, for no additional charge, we're also going to check your brakes, check your tires, top off your fluids, and you run through it. And now all of a sudden they're like, that's no extra charge. Yeah, that sounds like a deal versus just saying
Exactly.
multi-point inspection, because it's the multi-point's 27-point multi-point inspection. That's 27 items the customer's getting without any explanation, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Like I went in to get this recall done. I was doing an oil change and I was asking about winter tires at the same time. And not only did she provide a proposal of winter tires, it was like a multi-page thing. The thing that was really interesting about that, from my point of view, is I happen to have prepaid maintenance on my car, which I recommend to anybody who's buying a car because it's a no-brainer. I always used to compare it to groceries. I said, if I could lock in grocery prices today for the next, you want to do that, or you want to just hope you can afford them, or whatever. But the thing that's interesting when you look at prepaid maintenance, and I worked with both Audi stores and Ford stores who had had that product, as well as Nissan Infiniti stores. The thing that's interesting from a service drive perspective, to your point, so someone's coming in and go, okay, great. Your car has a certain amount of miles. You have the prepaid maintenance. That's fantastic. We're going to do all that. A lot of people who do that do these other things. It's easier to do that upsell because everything's included essentially already. And I think that there's also a big miss for dealers who say have an oil change for life program, which I'm not a fan of, but whatever. Oil change for life program, it's easier to sell other things because that's included. But the thing that was really interesting is I also went to another tire company that happens to also sell tires just out of curiosity. Because years ago, when I was doing BDCs with General Motors and other stores, one of the sharpest guys I ever met was a guy who not only owned independent service stations, he was a tire expert. So he went into dealers and taught them how to sell tires. And the thing that was interesting was the place that just sold tires and does maintenance wasn't as good at presenting tires as the dealer. And that's usually the opposite. So I thought that was really interesting. But more importantly, the fact that they took the time to do a proposal, and it was the same store that was trying to sell me a car, the service department was better trained than the sales department on how to do that. And it was really interesting because when you look at it, people can buy tires at, say, Costco or Jiffy Lube or Tire, whatever. But they really should be buying at the dealer who knows their car. But most dealers miss that. And the reason they miss it is it's like, we don't make money on tires. But tires are a repeatable thing, tire storage, rotation, whatever it is. And when you look at things like Hunter or UVI or those kind of technologies, it's a huge opportunity. But more importantly, you need to sell why the customer has to do these things. So I always use the example of Fiat. I had luckily owned a number of years ago. So Chrysler had sent me a coupon for an oil change for this Fiat. So I went into the dealer. I said, yeah, I need to do my oil change. I got this coupon. He goes, well, I don't even know if we can use that coupon. I said, the manufacturer sent it to me and I was coming in for an oil change. And then the salesman on the service provider side was trying to sell me, I don't know, fuel injection cleaning or something. But he didn't know how to sell it and he didn't know how to handle objections. And I'm not saying like I'm not buying it, but like you kind of have to have a reason. Like, why should I do that? It was really, really funny just because he just didn't know what he didn't know. And it wasn't about that you couldn't sell it. It was about people are going to ask questions. You need
right.
answers, right? So that was funny.
Well, and as I have to laugh about the tire side because we had a client up in Canada, and I know you're up in that way
Yeah.
also. But
Yeah.
one of the most genius things they did was we'll swap your spring tires for winter tires. We'll swap your winter tires for spring tires. And I asked the dealer, I said, where do you keep the tires? They're like, oh, we have a storage facility. We keep them. We rent out a storage facility and keep them. And they don't even, I think they charge the customer like, I don't know, $100 for the year or something like that. It
Yeah.
wasn't much. And it was discounted if they bought the tires from them or free storage if they buy tires. And I'm like, what a retention tool, right? Like, because you can't be like, I'm never coming back because you've got my tires. Like, where am I going? And it was such a genius thing. I mean, listen, down here in North Carolina, they ride around with some tires all year long. I mean, it's in some of the states below us that don't have state inspections, there's a lot of wet pavement out there that they got to be careful on. But yeah, I mean, I thought, what the heck? That's a great retention tool, and And so there's things out there that I think dealers can do to keep people coming back, right? I like how you say you're not a fan of free oil changes for life. Neither am I, because
Ooh.
people will only spend what they're getting for free, and they're not getting anything for free. If they're getting stuff for free, they might not spend anything extra. But the one thing I'll say is that I believe there's a lot that dealers can do out there on the retention side, right? There's ways to keep them coming back without giving away some of the stuff that we're doing from dealers right now. I mean, we've got a Toyota store out there that we help out every year because they've got to get retention numbers to achieve President's Award. And we run a campaign for them, and we go after those customers. Last year, they was their first year on with us. They got the President's Award. They came back to us this year, 2 week time period. We scheduled 100 appointments for them for this campaign we're running, and they're not giving anything away. Like
Oh, yeah.
nothing's for free. And the customers are coming in, right? And I'll give you a little secret, right? Like Toyota's got the 3-for-1 tire. I worked for a Toyota dealer for 8 years. Customers would pull into the parking lot sideways because their tires were so bald, but they were determined to wait for that buy three, get the fourth for $1 tire offer that was going on.
Well, it's
But
funny you bring that up. So this gentleman who taught tires, like he's like a tire specialist teaching tourists how to sell tires. I'm not kidding. So I'm in this meeting. He's talking to service providers. Here's how you sell tires. Here's how you compare them. Here's how you advise people. Kind of like you're, I don't know, working at Best Buy selling stereos or something. I don't know, same sort of thing. So I asked him. I said, "Well, what do you do?" He goes, "Well, I own third-party oil change facilities or service facilities." I said, "Okay, well, what's your retention?" He goes, "Oh, 75%." I said, "What?" The General Motors dealer was trying to hit 40, I think. I think that was like their target. And I'm like, how do you get to 75%? He goes, "Sell everybody tires. Doesn't matter, sell everyone tires." So I said, "So what's your goal?" He says, "Oh, I want to get to 90% retention." I'm like, "What?" But it was interesting because I think dealers don't focus on things that are simple, like wiper blades and tires are two that come to mind. Obviously, if you're driving in whatever climate, whether it be LA or Charlotte or Toronto or New York, whatever, maybe there's a winter tire discussion. But even if there isn't, you should probably be replacing the wiper blades once a year. In LA, maybe once every 2 years. But at the end of the day, that person's coming in. It's a no-brainer. You do a wiper blade promotion. You do a recall is another one that really shocked me. I did a show a while ago on recalls. And the average across brands is 35% are done. The only brand that does more is Stellantis. They do 70. But the rest of the brands, they just don't fix this stuff, like at all. Like,
well, and you bring up a good point. When I was at Toyota, like I said, I did the marketing and all that, and we worked with a billboard company, and we had a digital billboard right on Interstate 80.
yeah.
And I would watch the weather. So we had all our billboards. They let me have access to our system so we could go and put the billboards up as we needed. But we would have the billboard offers already built. And so if we knew a snowstorm was coming within 2 days or 3 days, we'd put up a billboard that says snow's coming. Have you checked your tires? Right? Because dealerships need to get out in front of the stuff. Like if I know right now it's 20 degrees in North Carolina in the mornings when we wake up, this is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the top 3 things I hear on the phone every day from North Carolina customers are? Tires, tire pressure lights on, car won't start, and then whatever else it might be, oil changes, tire rotations, just the maintenance stuff are the kind of the top 3 things we're hearing right now because of the holidays. And I told a handful of our stores, I called them up and I said, "Hey, we need to open up your schedules as best as possible and flood it with oil changes because we were going into Thanksgiving and it was cold. We need to just get these people in. Nobody's calling up before Thanksgiving saying, 'Hey, take my car for a week and diagnose it.' They're going to figure out a way to get to grandma's house with the check engine light on. But you don't get to look at the check engine light if you don't get them in for the oil change that they're thinking about before they drive, or the tire pressure monitor, or the dead battery, right? So the whole idea of be forward thinking, right? So if we know winter's coming, we know spring's coming, like let's get our mindset right. So we're looking at and talking about these things. We used to run a campaign when I was on the retail side every year for just changing the clock out. Hey, we had a time change, can't figure out how to change your clock, bring it on in, check it in, do a multi-point. Here's your updated clock. Oh, by the way, you do need brakes and tires, but have a good day. Whoa, wait a second, that type of thing. So, and customers like that, right? They and I always like to tell our agents, use this analogy to customers. Talk to them like you would if you're coming into a doctor's office, right? Like for example, most customers will call us and tell us they went to Advanced Auto Parts,
Yeah.
AutoZone, and had somebody code scan it. Tell
Yeah.
them I understand that, but there's no way your doctor would ever let you walk in with a printout from WMD and all of a sudden start prescribing you some medication and let you leave. So I'm going to ask you to come in, let us take a second look at your vehicle, and let us make some recommendations. And when you put it in perspective of their health, it relates to them. I mean, your car, it's got a heart, not literally before somebody corrects me on this
Yeah.
video, but it has a heart, something that makes it run, right? It
Yeah.
has, arms or feet or whatever you want to call it, tires, wheels, it's got wipers, eyelids, however, somebody's now visioning this, or a Volkswagen Beetle. But it's, if you think of it like that and you explain it to a customer and why it needs, I mean, goodness gracious, some of these prices of cars, have you seen them, like a lifted truck? I mean, 60, 70, 80, $100,000. And people, I just do oil changes and tire rotations. That's awesome.
What
That's
was it
awesome.
that I saw that they had this Jeep Rubicon something, limited edition something or other with all this
Right.
crap on it. It was over 100 grand.
Right. And they do
I
oil
was like,
changes and tire rotations.
what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, why are we
What?
not putting the money into this thing? I mean, but in defense of people, the average car on the road right now, I think they said is 12, 13 years old, right? I mean, I think it was 12 and now it's 13 years old because people have just kept them. That's amazing. I would be curious to start talking to those people driving around a 13-year-old car and say, what did you do for maintenance?
Yeah.
We'll skip it. They'll skip the Toyota people, right? They just did oil changes and
Yeah.
tire rotations. But the people that are driving around in some of these trucks and things that, they're using for work vehicles and stuff, like what did you do? Wow, man, every time I had a recommended maintenance, I bring it in, I get it done. I mean, I've got dealerships out there. I can tell their advisors do a great job of really
Yeah.
doing a solid walkthrough and everything, because the customer will call in and like, I need maintenance. Okay, what do you need? Whatever the owner's manual says. And I'm like, that's done right, because that's where the money's at, right? You got your 30s, your 60s, your 90s, and all that other stuff. So
And also have a seasonal offer, but also have an interesting offer. So
right.
I used to sell websites to car dealers. I worked for a company out of California for a couple of years. They might have had sales offers from the manufacturer, which aren't interesting. They might have had offers of some type, used car offer, whatever. Did they ever have service specials? No. Why? No idea. But the one that I saw this year, which was really interesting, is they latched on to the seasonal nature of people buying stuff at this time of the year. And I was like, it was really interesting. So people are in that buying mood, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or Festivus or whatever they're buying for, I don't know, winter solstice, whatever it is for them. They said, what are you buying for your car this Christmas? And I was like, that's very interesting. I was like, how does that work? But the thing that was interesting is it was like, I'd never seen anyone do that. I was
You
like,
got
that's very interesting. Maybe that works.
you bought the eyelashes, didn't you?
No, I didn't, but I did see a pitch for that woman who tried to do that, one of these pitching shows. So she
Yeah.
was on Dragon's Den, which is like Shark Tank in Canada. I think O'Leary and Hirschbeck were on that first, but whatever. They also have it in the UK. So this woman's on the show trying to sell these eyelashes, right? So she's the inventor. And they're like double stick tape on the front of cars. And she had like a Beetle, I think. So she's in this pitch and she's trying to get money for this. Halfway through the pitch, the eyelash starts coming off. And I was like, things not to do on live television when you're trying to sell the goofiest thing I've ever seen. But the thing that was really interesting when you look at it is it's about seasonal offers. So when I started to do websites for car dealers, and we'd have monthly meetings with them, and they were all over the US and Canada, is I'd say, listen, what seasonal offer are you doing this month, this quarter? If it's in service, if it's in sales every month, what are you doing that's different than everybody else? Like if it's rain, for example, maybe it's all weather floor mats. If it's snow, maybe it's something to do with heating. I don't know, but you should have something, especially seasonally, because when someone's in the holiday season and they're already in a buying mood and probably spending more money than they have, why wouldn't you tie into that? So that car thing was kind of interesting. I was almost thinking it was like a super rad with like the dog thing Subaru does, like love your
Yep.
dog, love your car. Like I think that would be really interesting for Volkswagen, like with a Beetle or something like that. Like, oh, what are you giving your car? Oh, your car is your friend or whatever. People name cars, which is also really strange. But I just thought it was an interesting offer. I'd never seen anyone do that. So it was kind of interesting. And you could tie it in with recalls, you could tie it in with safety, you could tie it in with seasons. You could even tie it in with a specific holiday or a diversified group, even. I mean, I don't know if you want to tie it into politics, but you probably could. Like, are you upset about the election? Maybe you should do something for your car.
Yeah, I would skip the election all the way around for that, but I would definitely. I mean, even just talking about it, right? We reach out to customers as customers, but maybe those that name their cars, we need to change the profile inside of X Time and CDK and things like that.
Yeah.
So when they get an email, if their car's name is Big Blue, it's like, hey, Big Blue, it's time for service, right? I mean, from a consumer standpoint, how does that make you feel, right? Yeah, I mean, people that name their cars would probably go googly eyes over the fact that you just emailed their car and not them. They'd be like, "This is amazing." Happy birthday, Big Blue. Oh my goodness, how did they know? Like, yeah,
Well,
but
I was at NADA last year, I think it was, and the car I have has an app, and the app has things like a health report and all this crap, right? But what it should have, and it does, but they don't do it well, is they could populate that with an offer from your local dealer. So when you open it to say, I don't know, remote start the car, or start it early, or park it, or lock it, or whatever you're doing, it could have a seasonal offer where it's like, oh, we noticed that you live in Calgary, or we notice you live in Charlotte, or we notice you live in LA. The weather, to your point, is going to be this for next week, and your local dealer, who happens to be your preferred dealer in your app, has this offer. Did you want to take advantage of it? Like a Black Friday or a cyber offer. It could be a parts offer. It could be a service offer. But more importantly, it could be right here in your hand. So I remember meeting with Ford Motor Company, and I happen to own a Jeep product right now, but I change them often. I said, why wouldn't you be doing that for that Ford Bronco customer? And obviously not an OJ offer, but Ford Bronco customer. Or in the Jeep world, maybe it's like, oh, we're giving you this warm coffee mug or whatever if you buy this. I
the
mean,
duck.
look at the amount of offers this time of year, whether it be Cyber Monday or Black Friday. Why wouldn't there be a seasonal car offer?
Yeah,
Why wouldn't they be doing that? And to me, whether it's a phone call or an email or a text message or an app, some dealers have their own loyalty, whatever. And those are getting more sophisticated. Why wouldn't they do that to retain the customer, but more importantly, to stand out from that Jiffy Lube or Minute Lube or Pep Boys or Walmart or whatever it might be? And I think that's a real, as you were saying, buy three tires get one free. But what if it was like buy three tires get one free, and we're going to give you, like, I don't know, a hoodie or something. I don't know, something
rubber
non,
duck.
whatever, right? But that's pretty much my thought on it. When I look at campaigns, and we did a lot of them when I worked with dealers, what surprised me was the lack of outside of the box thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how can I look at a group of customers that maybe haven't been here in a while and retain them? Especially with privacy laws changing these days, you've got to touch that customer I think every 3 months. That base is perishable every month because people's email change and they opt out and whatever. But the
Yep.
other thing that's great if it's a recall is it's hard to opt out of a recall because it's safety. So you may be able to retain that customer that maybe you lost just because it's like, hey, I just want to let you know it's a safety issue. Like, I know you're on the do not call list, but it's a safety issue. Did you want to do it, right?
Yeah,
So
that's exactly it. I mean, it's I think for me, just 2025 focus is really helping dealers create that retention and keep those customers coming back, because at the end of the day, and how do you make it frictionless, right? Everything from I once heard somebody say, from the click to the brick, right? How do we make that all match? And that's what it comes down to.
so what are you predicting for 2025, or what are you suggesting dealers do to make 2025 a great year? Being that we're dealing with a lot of headwinds like interest rates and economic change and political change and too much inventory and all that kind of stuff. Like, what do you recommend they prioritize as we roll into 2025? In a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think the three biggest things: one, simplify the car buying process as best as possible for the consumer. Two, ensure that you're getting the consumer a good, solid service walk around, introduction to service, so that when somebody like Bowtie Solutions is reaching out, inviting customers back, they feel a peace about coming in. They know that they're well taken care of. And then three, really just putting processes in place to create retention to the customers. And this doesn't mean giving things away. This just means reaching out and inviting people back. I was looking at stats for one of our agents the other day. She handles CSI for a handful of our
Yeah.
stores. And I always tell her that, when you're calling on CSI, please ask to schedule the next service appointment.
Mhm.
And she's running right now, between all the different stores she handles, she's running at a 32% appointment set rate for calling back. And I look at it and think about it, right? When you go to the dentist office, they don't let you leave without making another appointment. They don't even let me out of the chair until I make another. The guy literally turns around from cleaning my teeth, opens up a laptop with his grimy gloves on, and starts typing away on the next appointment, on his keyboard that's wrapped in saran wrap, but we got to get that appointment in there, and by the time I check out and the woman looks at the insurance card, see if there's any payment due, she's verifying my appointment. So why are we not, when you call and do a CSI call and they say, hey, the experience was amazing, loved it, can't wait to come back and see you guys. Not that they say can't wait to come back and see you, but loved the experience, everything was good, definitely give you a great survey. Awesome. Well, I noticed that we hadn't scheduled your next service appointment. We like to get that set up in advance before we book up. Looks like 6 months is a good interval for you. 4 months. Can we get that scheduled for you? Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be curious to watch and look at the defection rate, see if the customer does come back, doesn't come back, right? But we have it designed in the system when we get that appointment scheduled that it's going to get them a text message reminder of their appointment. So
Yeah.
there's a lot for dealers to do, right? Like, make the buying process easy, make the introduction to service amazing, and make sure you've got a retention plan in place.
Yeah. I mean, I got a referral to a specialist dermatologist. And these guys are not only sending text reminders and phone call reminders that I think are automated, they're also threatening you in the text message. If you don't let us know within 48 hours of the appointment, we're gonna hit you with a charge. And I'm like, man, like what? Imagine a car dealer doing that. Yeah, you got your oil change. It's set up for next week, but if you don't make it, we're gonna hit you with $100 charge for canceling the appointment. I was like, wow. But to your point, if a dentist can do that, and we know how much people love dentists, if a
Right.
dentist can do that, why can't you as a car dealer? And it was funny when I worked for Dealer Facts at Sound by Snap-on, we would do that with a tablet in the drive, and they would book appointments. They could also book it on a website. But when you got the person on the phone for example, a recall, or you got them for declined service, or maybe a free oil change, why wouldn't you be booking the next service? Because it just makes sense for the customer. And then you can move forward with that. But more importantly, if you're not booking that next service, then you got to chase the customer. It just doesn't make sense from a workflow point of view. Plus, the customer, it's easier for them because then they can plan their life around it. I mean, the thing that's I think has been interesting that changed over the last 5 years is Uber for Business replacing shuttle service.
Right.
And I think the thing that was really interesting about that is I worked for Mercedes-Benz years ago, and they had a loaner program. So this was hilarious. So they happen to own all the dealers in the Greater Vancouver area and most of the dealers in the Greater Toronto area. So what limited their service interval was the loaners they had. So they would always offer a loaner, and then we work with them. We're like, why are you offering someone a loaner? They said, well, because we have them. It's like, yeah, but that person who has an S class doesn't want a C class. The person who has a smart car is getting an upgrade. Why don't you just stop asking that question? You're managing a fleet of vehicles. It was kind of interesting because at the end of the day, that simple language change, like, oh, did you have a ride, or do you want us to drop you off somewhere?
Right.
That's the end of that process. And it's funny, I used to own a Porsche product, and the dealer here in town, you would be in and out of there in literally 10 minutes. Uber you there, Uber you back. Nobody's waiting. Like, nobody's waiting. And when I worked for General Motors stores years ago, everyone was waiting. So you had like the horde in the service lounge going, is it done yet? Is it done yet? And it's like, you created that problem. So it's about experience, but more importantly, it's about controlling the process for the benefit of the store and revenue, and for the benefit of the customer. And having the customer there to watch your tech work on a car, it's probably not a good idea.
Well, and I mean, and I'll kind of wrap it up with this, but when there's always somebody in there that's got a really bad car that didn't plan on having a really bad car and a really
Yeah.
bad day and not having the money to do it. And if they start getting loud, then everybody gets frustrated, right? It's no different than the airport. I mean, when people start wigging out at the airport, I have yet to figure out why an airport doesn't have a place where they pull people aside, get them out of there, because it's just negativity breeds negativity, right? It's no different than the sales floor.
Yeah.
You know, when they sell a car and they ring the bell and everybody claps and cheers, that's how you start selling more cars. Activity breeds activity. It goes both ways. So yeah, I think you're right. I mean, get them out of your service drive. You know, spare them from the amazing coffee that you have, and call it a day.
So you mean balloons don't sell cars? I always thought they did.
Uh, that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But the wavy arm guy does.
Yeah, how do you know there's a sale at a car dealership? Balloons. One of their balloons every freaking day.
Well, I remember ballooning up the lot in my selling days,
Oh, oof.
and it's weird though because customers would stop. The best thing we did though for selling cars was open the hood and put the signs in
Yeah.
there that said sale, but you spell sale wrong. You spell it seal. That way people want to come in and correct you, and then you get a chance to have an opportunity.
Well, I have to tell you this story. So I worked at a Honda store many years ago now, and we used to have our own supply of air to fill out these balloons because we used to do them every day. And one day I just me and a couple guys are like, yeah, we're just gonna do like 5 times as many as we normally do, just for kicks. Because we had all this helium, we were like, yeah, you know. And then my manager like went nuts on me. I'm like, well, so if balloons sell cars, then more balloons sell more cars, right? And now I've seen dealers now that have like permanent installations that are like these. They're like almost solid plastic balloon displays. It's like balloon animals or something. Or those blow up gorillas that they put on the roof and stuff. Those
Right.
that's got to be the funniest thing ever. Anyway,
Oh
it's been a
goodness.
pleasure, the interview. If you have questions about for Matt, there'll be information below in the description. So how can someone get started if they're like a car dealer and maybe, I don't know, they don't want to manage their own BDC, but they want results? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, for us, they can reach out to Bowtie Solutions. We've got a website, bowtieautosolutions.com. They can reach out that way. They can also reach me. My cell phone number, 570 is 517-9331. Give me a call directly and just talk. I mean, one of the things that we're able to do for dealers is we can actually put our team and our software behind a dealership. So they might say, "Hey, I've got a BDC. I don't know if they're doing a good job in service or they are doing a good
Right.
job." And we can come in. You know, we've got some really inexpensive ways to come in behind them just to monitor how many calls they're missing. And I'll leave this. We had a dealer come to us. They signed up. We asked them how many calls we'd be getting, and they said, "You're going to probably handle 400 calls. You're just going to catch the overflow between our two stores. We don't handle any less and never have handled any less than 1,200 calls, setting 295 appointments a month
Yeah.
from the calls their team's missing." So you don't know what you don't know until you measure it. So that's one of the things we like to do. You know, and if any dealer is looking for us to do that, if we don't manage it at all, we just let it flow into our system to tell them how many calls they're missing. You know, because if they've heard this show and mentioned AutoHub, I can do 1 month for them at no charge just to tell them how many calls fell into our system that they would have missed.
Yeah, it's shocking how many calls are missed at car dealers.
100%.
There's a few
100%.
reasons, in my opinion. Number one, phone trees are a nightmare. Like that is like the worst. I mean, I've been calling on dealers for 15 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've been hung up on as a potential customer. Like it's unbelievable. But more importantly, and you hit it right on the head. Let's just say I have a couple departments. I have sales, I have service, I have parts, which is a whole other story, and then I have finance. The amount of calls that a dealership is getting is way more than they think. But more importantly, the missed opportunities where someone's calling one dealer and then another dealer and then another dealer and then another dealer. They're probably going to stop when they get help. And it's not that you couldn't help them, it's just you weren't aware of it or you just didn't know that that was even a possibility. I mean, it's like calling a law office. If you need a lawyer and you had an accident, you're going to call until you get a lawyer. You're not going to just sort of hang out and go, "Oh, I'll call them back." So that's kind of what it comes. But thanks very much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. Details will be below. If you are at NADA, definitely love to do an interview. That's in New Orleans this year, thankfully. And have yourself a great day. All the best for the holidays and the new year, 2025. Scary.
I know. We'll see.